Welcome to episode 6 of Rabbit Hole Reviews. We're going to take a look at the H&K USP SD. So what do we get with all these letters? Let's break it down. So H&K, as most of you probably already know, stands for Heckler and Koch. It's a German firearms manufacturer going back to the late 1950s, 1960s. Responsible for a bunch of very high-profile design. Probably the most notable would be the H&K MP5 submachine gun, but not limited to things like the HK21 light machine gun, the PSG-1 police sniper rifle, and of course their entire line of pistols, which the USP, which stands for Universal Self-Loading Pistol, is one of their, I would say, iconic designs. As a side note, the SD portion of this long, drawn-out name stands for Schalldämpfer, which in German means sound suppressor or muffler. So anytime you see the letters SD after a firearm, at least in the HK world, like the H&K MP5 SD, that's the integrated suppressed version. So likewise, this is the USP SD or Schalldämpfer, which has provisions for a suppressor, as you can see by the threaded barrel covered by these thread protectors right here. So let's get into some of the specs. The barrel is a 13.5 by 1 inch left-hand thread. So that's a European thread pitch. It's not as common in the US. You can get adapters and there are suppressors out there in that thread pitch. It's not as common as the 1/2 by 28 that you most commonly see in 9mm. Also, the left hand is designed to tighten the suppressor onto the barrel as it's fired so it doesn't come loose. So if I could, well, I'm going to nitpick a bunch of things on this handgun, even though I like it a lot. I'm not going to get rid of it. One of the things I wish they had done was actually had a common thread pitch for certain export markets. I think the U.S. export market's large enough to warrant H&K threading their barrels for a more common pitch. But, you know, that's just me. Another thing which is a nitpick, but given the period when this gun was introduced and sold, I guess it's kind of on a learning curve on H&K's part. You see here the dust cover has an accessory rail, but it's proprietary. So if you want to mount anything like a Surefire or any kind of weapons light, you're going to have to get an adapter. Is that a big issue? Not particularly. It's just something that you have to factor in when you look at something like a USP. Other designs by H&K, they've started to figure out that people don't want their proprietary rail, so they've kind of adapted. But in this case, if you buy a USP SD, this is what you're going to work with. If you look down here, the magazine button, in this case, it's not a button, it's a paddle. And if you don't like the H&K style magazine paddle, you're pretty much out of luck because the USP SD does not come with any other option. Unlike the VP9, HK VP9, which has the option of a magazine button release or a paddle. So that's something else to keep in mind. If you really do not like that style of magazine release, then you might want to look at different options. It is ambidextrous, so there is that. But you're going to be stuck with the paddle. Also, if you look here, there's no interchangeable back straps. Again, that goes back to when this gun was designed. You're looking at a USP started to be manufactured in about 1993. So you're looking at a 30-year-old design. There were no interchangeable back straps back then. Hopefully on the new USPs, I'm not 100% in tune with the market on that. Maybe they will incorporate some sort of backstrap changes if they haven't already done so. I think that would be a wise decision to do that, given the fact that even companies like Glock have interchangeable backstraps. So you kind of have to use them as a yardstick, I think, in terms of what the consumer wants, because Glock has figured that out. So this is a variant 1 pistol, which means you have the option of both cock and lock, like a 1911 or Browning high power, or you have the option to decock like most pistols, and carry with a round in the chamber while decocking the hammer. The variant 1 is the version that I always go to when I look at USPs. The USP I had before this was also a variant 1. Check out these proof marks and these date codes on the H&K. That's something I just really like. Their attention to detail and the way that they highlight those. I mean, I understand that it's required by law in Germany to have that, but it's just such a nice touch that you really don't see in U.S. manufacturers. So what else? Well, the sights are very nice. We'll take a look at those now. They are, of course, raised to account for the suppressor that, I have never actually mounted on this gun. I don't have a suppressor for this. They are nice. They're almost too adjustable in my mind. I don't know if that makes sense to have something that's too adjustable. I think it's a little bit overkill on a pistol like this. These are target sights in my mind. But they don't have Trigicon or any kind of vials for night sights, which I think for the price you're looking, these guns are $1,000 and up. I think for the price, I wish H&K had put some sort of night sight option on there. I'm not sure why they didn't, but it is what it is. So what about the specs? So the height is 5.35 inches. It has a width of 1.26 inches, a barrel length of 4.86 inches. The unloaded weight with the one empty magazine, which we were about to demonstrate here, is 28.16 ounces. So in a minute, we're going to put it on the scale, and we're going to take a look and see if that weight bears out. We're also going to load it with a loaded magazine to see what the actual street weight's going to be. The capacity is 15 rounds. Now, I think in 2022, for a pistol of this size to have a 15-round capacity is a little behind the times. Now, you can get something called a jet funnel, which is an HK add-on where you can, it attaches to the base of the pistol grip here, and it extends the pistol grip just enough to use different magazines, proprietary magazines that hold 18 rounds. So you can up the capacity, say if this were a house gun, to 18 rounds, or a carry gun if that's what you want to do, or competition. So I would definitely get that if you're not going to carry the gun. If you're going to carry the gun, I would leave it as is because you want to have a smaller profile so it doesn't print. But any other use, I would definitely opt for the jet funnel. That extra 3 rounds, I think, is definitely worth the purchase price. Also, a lot of people change out the triggers on these. So I don't have a problem with it, but I'm not a competition shooter. I'm probably never going to be a competition shooter, but a lot of people change out the stock trigger for a match trigger, which from what I understand is fairly easy to do. You could probably change out the trigger in the time that it takes to watch this video. I don't have any price ranges on that because I haven't looked into it. I think they're relatively hard to get right now, so I'm sure that's driven the price up. Let's put it on the scale without further ado and see what we're working with and see if those numbers of 28.16 ounce are somewhat accurate. I'm pretty sure all the numbers that I find online are going to be accurate, but we'll just be a little thorough. All right, so 28.6 versus 28.16. So I'll take that weight. Now for the real weight. What I've got loaded up is 15 rounds of, weapon is clear. We're going to decock like so. I have 15 rounds of 115 grain Full Metal Jacket 9mm Norma brand, if anyone wants to know. And what is the weight going to be? So 34.85 ounces, almost 35 ounces. Now, if you carry 15 plus 1, which was something I would do if I were going to carry this gun, that brings it up to 35.3 ounces. So not terrible. I mean, it is a polymer frame pistol. I think the H&Ks are a little bit blocky in terms of the way they feel. They feel a little top heavy. I like the ergonomics. What I do like is the overall grip profile, and I like the very large trigger guard. You're not going to have any problems with gloves or anything like that. This is definitely a duty pistol. It's meant for serious use. Police departments, SWAT teams have used this sort of pistol. The German Navy's Kampfschwimmer, which is their version of the Navy SEALs, also use it. So it's definitely well made. There's a couple things which always kind of perplexes me about H&K. If you look, for those of you that have Glocks and you know the factory Glock magazines, you notice that the factory Glock magazines are actually pretty well made. They have a steel liner and they have reinforced steel feed lips. But if you look at the rather expensive H&K USP magazines, it is just straight plastic all the way through. You get reinforced nothing. You do get witness holes, but you can see it just seems very cheaply made. Now, I've never had an issue with magazines. I've never had any cracking feed lips or any failures. I just think that for the price of the magazine and the price of the pistol in general, that they would include a steel liner or aluminum liner or something inside the magazine. Maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe that's something that they'll fix down the line. I'm just not sure why Glock does it and has been doing it for decades, and H&K makes a magazine like that. But moving on, would I carry a gun like this? Actually, I would carry a USP, but I would not carry this particular model because you've got raised up almost micro adjustable sights, which you don't need for a carry gun, in my opinion. You have a threaded barrel, which adds length, and a feature that you're not going to use if you're going to carry it, in my mind. You're not going to have a suppressor on it. You're not going to have a flash hider. You're just going to carry a handgun and a holster with night sights, right? That's how I would carry a gun. So as a carry option, I really like the USP. What I don't like is the USP SD. So if I were going to carry this, I would opt for the baser model. It is less expensive for one, so that's a plus. That would allow me to go back and put some Trijicons or do something else to it, and maybe even invest in a match trigger. By keeping the match trigger in place or putting that in and not putting a jet funnel, you have a little bit lower profile grip. You still have 15+1 capacity. You get night sights that are more low profile. You don't have the extended barrel and the extra weight and the extra, just extra stuff, period. And you could spend that money difference between the USP SD and the USP standard model and invest in a match trigger. And I think that would be a better carry option. Now, as a house gun, this would excel. I would go for a jet funnel option. That would be the first thing I would do to give you that extra 3-round capacity. And of course, you're going to have to invest in an adapter if you want to put a light, which is pretty much a must in my mind. You're going to have a light for a bedside gun. The sights are somewhat less important. I may or may not update the sights and put Trijicons. You could keep those sights stock as a bedside gun, assuming you have a light on there and you have a jet funnel. That's how I would run that gun. Now let's take a look at the trigger pulls. I think they're going to be in the range of about 12 pounds and probably half that in single action. So if I were to carry this gun, I have the options of carrying it both ways. I could cock and lock like a 45, or I could, drop the hammer on a loaded chamber. I think I would go with the second option. I don't think I would carry it cock and lock. Not that I'm not comfortable carrying it that way. I'm just more used to carrying pistols that have a safety engaged and have the double action pull being my first pull. So that being said, we're going to test the double action trigger pulls real quick. I'm going to try to keep this video under 20 minutes. The YouTube analytics say that most of you guys don't get even halfway through the video, so I'm going to try to tailor my length to right around the time when you guys tap out of watching it. So 11.2 pounds for the first double action pull. £12.4. And there goes my little adapter piece. 11.4 pounds. Okay, so not terrible. let's see if I can reattach my little bumper. I really do need to get electrical tape on this. These trigger gauges are not bad. This is one of those Amazon specials you can get. I can link to it, or if someone puts in the comment section, I can send you where to get it. They're actually very nice, but the one thing that they cheaped out on, not to go down a rabbit hole about trigger gauges, is that this little rubber sleeve around the elbow joint here is frankly garbage. And after a few pulls, you start to strip off the rubber insulator on this little rod, and that can, well, I mean, it scratches up crap for one, but so you can see where I've had to adapt it with tape. That's the one drawback, and but otherwise I recommend this gauge. These are portable. You can even take them apart to make them smaller to fit in a pocket. Anyway, so moving on, let's do the single action pulls because we're coming up on 16 minutes. .2 pounds. It seems really light. 5.2 pounds. And 4.6 pounds. So between 4.2 and 5.2 pounds in single action. Perfectly adequate. I'm not really a trigger snob when it comes to handguns, probably more so with rifles, because I think the price of failure on a crap trigger on a rifle is higher. Pistols I'm fairly forgiving. Unless they're prohibitively heavy, I don't really have a problem. If they're extremely heavy, that can actually impact accuracy in my view. But, this is a polymer trigger. H&K's triggers are, I would say, middle of the road. They're not outstanding and they're not horrendous. The overall fit and finish and feel of the gun, it does feel like a $1,000 gun. If that makes sense. I don't know how I can convey that within video. Maybe I'm rationalizing because I paid over that. I have to convince myself that it feels like a $1,000 gun. But it definitely shoots like a $1,000 gun. Accuracy and reliability are both excellent. So you're not going to have any issues there. What it really boils down to is, do you want to spend $1,000 plus on a gun that basically does the same thing as a Glock 19 does with a Glock replacement barrel? You've got a better thread pitch, more common thread pitch. The Glock 19 barrels are probably $200 maybe. Added to the price of a Gen 5 Glock 19, you're looking at maybe $700, $800 out the door. Put some Trijicons on it, $800 roughly. You're getting a gun where the magazines are less expensive. They're a little bit more reinforced. I think they're overall better build quality as far as the magazines. The accessory rail is common. You can put any kind of lights you want on there. This isn't a Glock video. That's coming down the road. But just keep in mind, if you're not a collector or if you just don't happen to have a thing for HK like I do, and you're looking for a gun that does strictly duty use, for if you're paying your bills with it or if you're using it and you're on a budget, I think a Glock will do everything that this will do for roughly half the money. And you have more modularity and more flexibility. So in summary, I'm going to say, get this gun if you like HK, if you like an accurate gun, if you like a reliable gun, and you're okay with the shortcomings. It's when you go to resell an HK, it's always going to get a premium, unlike a Glock. They don't import as many of these, so they're not everywhere like Glocks. So that has a lot to do with the price. It's a very well thought out handgun. We're going to do a review on the HK P30, another one of my favorite HKs. That's coming up. That's a strong contender to be a replacement or an alternative to this one. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I would say overall, I really like this handgun. If you guys have any questions about the gun that I didn't cover in the video, or if you want to critique the video itself, if I omitted facts or got facts wrong, feel free to pipe in there. I will respond to pretty much every comment that I see. And in short, that's been my review of the H&K USP SD.